So yesterday, we unfortunately had another terrorism attack that has been linked to ISIS, or so they say. There has now been two in the last 7 days, and at this point, based on the data of the previous terrorist incidents that have taken place in the United States that were linked to ISIS, this is getting a little bit fishy, because in 7 days, we've just had two, when in previous years that we're going to look into here in a moment, this is very unusual. And of course, it happens when we declare war, an illegal and offensive war on Iran. And it's almost like I'm not conspiracy brained at all, but like at this point, I'm looking at this and I'm like, are these motherfuckers doing like a PSYOP? Or is this like light false flag attacks? Is this some way to further sway public support to be, well, I guess, sway the public to be more against Muslims in general, to be even more Islamophobic? Is this some way to make people more supportive of the war in Iran? But what would be ironic about that, ironic, I say Iran and then I say ironic. Jesus Christ, anyways, it'd be ironic because ISIS and Iran are, believe it or not, and I suspect a lot of Americans don't know this, and this is exactly what the government would rely on. ISIS and Iran are and have been engaged in military conflict for at least a decade now. And they're also in a military conflict with groups like Taliban and Al-Qaeda and so forth. It's just weird. This all could be coincidence, but I just want to give my thoughts. I'll give more here in a moment, but first I want to read this article real quick and then get into the data of the history of these ISIS-linked terrorist attacks. So, let's go over the quick details from the Old Dominion shooting that took place yesterday. A tremendous act of bravery and courage by these students who were able to subdue and, as far as we can tell, just straight up kill the attacker. So this is from CNN. Terror suspect in deadly Old Dominion shooting in Virginia was subdued by students, officials say. When a convicted ISIS supporter stepped into an ROTC classroom at Old Dominion University on Thursday and opened fire, the group of students inside barely hesitated before leaping up to subdue their attacker. By the end of the struggle, the shooter was dead, but so too was one of their peers. The FBI is now investigating the Thursday morning attack as an act of terrorism, identifying the shooter as Mohamed Bailor Jalloh, a former Virginia National Guard member who has served a prison time for attempting to aid the Islamist militant group a decade ago. Before the attack began, FBI Special Agent in Charge Dominic Evans said Jalloh shouted, "Allahu Akbar," or "God is greater." All right, this has to be a psyop, man. This just has to be. One of the students stabbed Jalloh, according to the multiple law enforcement sources briefed on the case. The attacker's ultimate cause of death is unclear. We can assume it was from the brave students, and I can't give like enough props and respect to these students. Unfortunately, one of their peers did die. I want to say it was like a professor. I could be wrong on that, but it could have been a lot worse if it was not for their heroism and courage. So shout out to those students. In 2016, Jalloh tried to procure weapons to be used in what he believed would be an attack committed in the name of ISIS, and also tried to donate money to the group, according to the Department of Justice. Here's where I also start to lean into the PSYOP, because unbeknownst to Jalloh, and this was his first conviction for ISIS, by the way, he had been speaking to an FBI source who was monitoring his behavior when discussing the timeline for a possible attack on U.S. soil. Jalloh expressed that it was better to plan an operation for Ramadan, according to an affidavit from an FBI agent. Jalloh pleaded guilty to attempting to provide material support to a designated foreign terrorist organization and was sentenced to 11 years in prison in 2017. He was released from federal custody in December 2024. Cue the this is all Biden's fault, people. Go ahead, type your comments. I'm waiting. But so this dude, from my understanding, he was caught like by the person it sounded like he was like discussing his plans with back in 2016, 2017, was an FBI agent. And now we know that our government has a history, especially in the wake of the war on terror, to target very like individuals, Muslim individuals who have deep mental issues, and they essentially coerce them into these kind of actions and kind of egg them on, and then they bust them. This is nothing new. And so that happened, and now you have this happening. It's just getting a little weird. It's getting a little weird. Okay. This is also, just want to touch on this. Just as I mentioned, there have been 2 ISIS inspired attacks in the past 7 days. The other one was at Gracie Mansion at a protest. A lot of conflicting information coming out of here, but the point to take home is that it was an ISIS inspired attack. And again, this one was super strange too, because like the victims, oh God, the terrorist in this situation instantly said, like, oh yeah, we're serving ISIS. This is for ISIS. It's like, come on. Okay. So I brought up the Wikipedia here for a list of terrorist incidents linked to the Islamic State. The Islamic State is not, but it's not Iran. Okay. The Islamic State is ISIS. It is the radical fundamentalist groups that I would actually agree with the terrorism designation for. As I said, Iran has been in armed conflict against all of these groups, by the way, despite what the United States might say regarding the largest state sponsor of terrorism. So if I just keyword search United States here, we have attacks in, let's see, we had one attack in 2014. We had 3 attacks in 2015. We had, I guess I can just do this. So 3 attacks in 2015. It looks like, what is this? 1 attack in 2 attacks in 2016. Let's move on. And 2 attacks in 2017. 1 attack, or is it 1 attack? Yeah, 1 attack in 2025. And then this one isn't here yet, but it hasn't been updated, but you're going to have 2 attacks in 2026 that took place within a week of each other. And the reason why I find this suspicious as hell is because, again, why would we suddenly see like an increase in ISIS inspired attacks right after the war with Iran? Like I said, ISIS and Iran are in armed conflict with each other. They do not like each other. Okay. I can't be more clear on that. So it's all a bit weird because, like, as you just seen from the wiki of previous attacks, like, this is just not a common thing. And for 2 to happen in a 7-day period is extremely sketchy, especially with this administration's hardline, like, anti-Muslim stance. And I feel like this is to drum up support for that stance and to drum up support for the war in Iran, because this government pretty much lumps Iran in the same category as ISIS, as Al-Qaeda, as the Taliban, even though they couldn't be more different. But also looking at these attacks got me on like another thought process. It was like, yeah, I'm not discounting the victims from these attacks. I'm not discounting the lives that were lost in these attacks, but do you think this is enough for like the overall war on terror and all of the terrorist attacks, that our version of terrorist attacks that we commit overseas in the name of justice and the war on terror? Like, you realize that between us and Israel, we commit terror on a massive scale almost daily. Do you know how many civilians we casually kill in a random bombing on some Tuesday? Much more than U.S. citizens that these terrorist attacks have killed in decades. And every time we clamp down harder overseas, there is inevitable blowback here at home. You got to understand, these people aren't just attacking us and doing terrorist acts against us for fun. They're not doing it because they just hate us for no reason. They hate us because they ain't us. You got to realize that these kind of attacks, and assuming these are real, are still directly related to our interference in the Middle East and our constant intervention, toppling of governments, PSYOPs overseas. Like, this all comes back to us eventually. When you are bombing indiscriminately overseas, random countries, like every week, and each one of those strikes are killing dozens of civilians minimum, what do you think happens? Like, let me put you in the shoes of one of these poor brown people living in the Middle East. Like, so you see how radical people in America are have become against Muslims and the support that the war on terror got. Now imagine if, like, and that's just from the attacks that the very limited attacks that have taken place on American soil. And I say limited because to the atrocities that we have committed overseas, these are very limited. That's why every time one happens, we can almost memorialize it and make it like a National Remembrance Day, because it's just that infrequent. But let me put you in different shoes. Imagine if we weren't this world superpower and just every week a larger nation than us just casually bombs random towns, random cities, killing dozens of Americans on a weekly basis. How would you feel about that? Wouldn't you want to take up arms against those people, this big nation that is thousands of miles away from you, but yet interfering in your affairs, bombing your schools, bombing your hospitals, bombing you in general? Like, do you see my point here? Okay, this video wasn't as streamlined and cohesive as I wanted it to be. It's kind of just me rambling. So if you're at this point, thank you for watching. But yeah, this just got me thinking. One last note, again, I cannot give enough respect to the courage of the ROTC students who subdued and presumably killed the attacker. That's very good, and it could have been a lot worse. Anyways, let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and I will see you in the next one. If you made it to this point in the video, I just want to give a special thank you. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button down below, and if you really enjoyed it, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button while you're down there. I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. I will try to reply to any and all comments that I can. Until next time, watch that video on screen.